The reason why faith is often tested in the darkest moments is because God reveals his power when fear is strongest. This story from the book of Matthew shows what happens when obedience leads into a storm, and how Jesus meets his followers where fear and faith collide. The reason why the disciples were struggling in the middle of the sea that night was because Jesus himself had sent them there. After feeding thousands with 5 loaves and 2 fish, Jesus instructed his disciples to get into a boat and cross ahead of him while he stayed behind to dismiss the crowd. As the boat moved farther from shore, darkness settled over the water. The wind grew stronger, and the waves began to crash violently against the boat. The disciples rowed with all their strength, but the storm pushed them back. Hour after hour passed, and exhaustion set in. Though Jesus was not physically with them, he was watching from the mountain where he prayed alone. Just before dawn, in the darkest part of the night, the disciples noticed something moving toward them across the water. Fear gripped their hearts. They cried out, believing they were seeing a ghost. Their terror echoed across the sea. Then a voice broke through the storm. "Take courage. It is I, do not be afraid." It was Jesus, walking on the water. Peter, bold and desperate, answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Jesus replied with a single word, "Come." Peter stepped out of the boat. For a moment, he walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he noticed the wind and the waves, fear replaced faith. He began to sink and cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" Together, they stepped into the boat. At once, the wind stopped. The storm that had tormented them through the night vanished in an instant. The disciples were overwhelmed with awe. They worshipped Jesus, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Matthew records this story to remind us that following Jesus does not guarantee calm seas. Sometimes obedience leads directly into storms. Yet Jesus never sends his people where his presence cannot reach them. Faith does not mean we never sink, it means we know who to cry out to when we do. Even when fear causes us to falter, Jesus is close enough to catch us. The reason why this story still matters today is because the same Jesus who walked on water still comes to us in our storms, still calls us to step out in faith, and still saves us when we call his name. The reason why the story did not end when the storm stopped is because faith must be lived out after the miracle, not just during it. When the wind died down and the sea became calm, the disciples sat in silence, absorbing what they had just witnessed. Their fear had faded, but their understanding was still growing. As the boat reached the shore, life did not suddenly become easier. Crowds were already waiting for Jesus. People brought the sick, the weak, and the broken, hoping for healing. The disciples watched as Jesus welcomed them with compassion, never turning anyone away. The one who ruled the wind now gently touched the wounded. The disciples began to realize that Jesus' power was not only displayed in dramatic moments, but also in quiet acts of mercy. The storm had revealed his authority, but the shore revealed his heart. Every healing, every kind word, deepened their understanding of who he truly was. Yet not everyone accepted him. Religious leaders questioned his authority and challenged his actions. They demanded signs, even after witnessing miracles. Jesus warned his disciples about hardened hearts and false faith, belief that sees wonders but refuses surrender. Later, when the disciples faced hunger again, they worried about bread. Jesus reminded them of the miracles they had already seen. The reason why they still struggled was not because Jesus lacked power, but because faith takes time to grow. Miracles amaze the eyes, but trust must take root in the heart. Jesus continued teaching them through parables, showing that the kingdom of heaven grows quietly, like a seed planted in the soil. Storms may reveal faith, but daily obedience strengthens it. The disciples were learning that following Jesus meant trusting him not only on the water, but also on land. In time, they would face greater storms, persecution, rejection, and fear, but they would remember the night Jesus walked toward them on the sea. That memory would anchor their faith when circumstances tried to shake it. Matthew includes these moments to show that discipleship is a journey. Faith is not proven once, but repeatedly. Each challenge, each doubt, and each test becomes an opportunity to trust Jesus more deeply. The reason why this part of the story matters is because many people believe in Jesus for miracles, but struggle to trust him in everyday life. Jesus invites his followers to walk with him beyond the storm, into obedience, service, and growth. And just as he was patient with his disciples, He remains patient with us, teaching, guiding, and strengthening our faith until trust becomes unshakable.